Welcome to the Daughters for Life Luncheon, an integral program in New College's vision for preparing students to live in a global society. I am Marian Moss, and my mother, Gloria Moss, are co-chairs, along with
my husband, Dr. Isam Susu, myself, Lynn Susu. I'd like to introduce the honorary chairs are Karen Hamad and Sue Jacobson, and they were the co-chairs last year. Will you please stand? Thank you very much. Also, we would like to thank Mary Ann Young, the Executive Director of the New College Foundation, Jessica Rogers, including their staff, Sherry Glukov and Sarah Wolcott-Phoebish, whose hard work has made this luncheon possible. Please watch the screens and see all our wonderful sponsors. We are so appreciative. Marian?
The scholarship program embodies our belief in the transformative power of education for women through the ripple effect of family and community. This program will change their lives, the lives of so many around them, and ultimately the world we share. Educating more women will create a better, more peaceful world. We are happy to have this program in our community. It is having a distinct positive effect. And we are happy that you have joined us as we move forward, advancing the vision of a better world through education. We sincerely hope you are inspired today to help us ensure that our community continues to welcome the Daughters for Life scholars and to support New College of Florida.
Would the Daughters for Life please stand? Thank you very much. We are delighted you could be with us today. I would like to introduce Mary Ann Young, the Executive Director of New College Foundation. Where are you?
Good morning. It's nice to have all of you here today. I'm really glad you could be with us. I'm a relative newcomer myself to New College. I arrived here at the end of July. But what I know is that I worked in higher education for about 30 years, and what's impressed me most about New College is the faculty and the students. The intellectual vitality and vibrancy is palpable when you're walking around campus and you're in the classroom. Also, more importantly, when you get to talk to the students and faculty, you understand their passion and their excitement about learning. And so we have a number of faculty and students who are here with us today. I hope you'll get a chance to have a conversation, hear more about what's happening in the classroom at New College, and I hope you'll walk away with a little bit better understanding of the kind of education we can provide for these wonderful young students.
I'm Steve Miles. I'm the provost of New College of Florida, and I'm really delighted to see all of you here today. When I was younger, I used to hear a phrase that was usually applied to someone as a compliment, a tribute to their sophistication, their cultural awareness and broad outlook. Citizen of the world. I haven't heard that phrase used a lot lately, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because so few people really qualify as citizens, but it's a little ironic because we've all become part of a global society, whether we want to be or not. if you own stocks or mutual funds, you are directly tied to markets overseas. When China's exponential growth begins to slow, our markets plunge. Our individual choices as consumers affect communities around the world, promoting growth, but often entailing environmental damage as well. And if we ever doubted our interdependence, global warming has forced us to recognize that we are truly all in this together. In the face of this complexity, it's tempting to retreat into the local or the parochial. Yet the liberal arts offer us powerful tools for engagement. A liberal arts education encourages curiosity, an interest in what one doesn't know yet wants to understand, intellectual flexibility, the willingness to expand intellectual frameworks on the basis of experience, an insistence on depth, patience to dig deep, develop mastery, and engage paradox, rejection of abstraction in favor of the rich texture of the concrete. Real life is messy and complex and requires habits of mind that are versed in the computational and the literary, in the historical and the artistic. For many years, New College has prepared students to become leaders in a global society. Former President Mike Michelson challenged the college to internationalize the curriculum, and our efforts over the past several decades have been impressive. We have added faculty in foreign languages and literature, Spanish, German, French, Russian, and more recently, Chinese and Hebrew. We've strengthened our study abroad office and have sent students to study in dozens of countries. And with financial support, we could make it possible for every New College student to spend at least one semester abroad. New College students have received Fulbright fellowships for postgraduate study at record rates, more per capita than Stanford or Harvard. Our international and area studies programs enable students to work with nearly 24 faculty to study topics such as climate and energy politics, global conflict resolution, business development in China, and community-based conservation efforts in Africa. When New College entered into a partnership with the Daughters for Life Foundation, we took a dramatic step forward in embracing the global, and in a manner that could not have been more concrete and more personal. By admitting these women from the Middle East, we entered into a relationship with them, one of mutual learning. These wonderful students are not visitors, but members of our community. And as such, they have contributed greatly in classes and in student life. We are so glad that they are here. Thank you. And now I'd like to ask that President O'Shea and Dr. Izzaldine Abilesh please come to the stage. And as they do, I would like for New College students and faculty to stand together with members of the New College Board of Trustees. Would you all please stand so that we can see you? And finally, I'd like to ask that we have our visiting students from Pineview are here. And we'd like for them to stand, and we'd like to thank Karen Ahmad for bringing them. Please, our Pineview students. Yay. Very well. Dr. Izzaldine Abilesh.
Thank you. Brothers and sisters, it's a great moment, because I want to thank all of you, because the one who is not thankful to people is not thankful to God. Thank you all from all of my heart. It's our day today for all of us. And to thank you all for coming, not only to celebrate, to support the second annual Daughters for Life Luncheon. It's your luncheon. You made it to happen. You believed in Daughters for Life mission and message. Daughters for Life is proud of the partnership with the New College of Florida and the unlimited support by all of you and the Sarasota community. We all must be proud of our beloved Daughters for Life scholars who will be the future leaders and agents of a change. We in Daughters for Life are inclusive of all, not exclusive. We will never and will never exclude anyone. The happiest moment for me is when I see a young woman, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Druze, anyone who is joining, because someone may raise the question, we don't see any Jewish woman. We would love and we appeal to you to help us to promote and bring Jewish young women from Israel to join Daughters for Life. We would love to see them joining us. To be composed from every corner in the Middle East, relative to their background, ethnicity, religion, because the happiest moment, as I said, as a gynecologist, was when I handled the baby to his mother. There is no difference in the cry of the newborn baby, Muslim, Jewish, or a Christian. That's what is needed. It's about humanity. Daughters for Life humanizes and not politicizing. Daughters for Life, it brings unity and not to divide. Daughters for Life spreads tolerance, compassion, love, respect, and the freedom for all. We need your support. And keep Daughters for Life spreading its message, which is highly needed these days more than any time ago. These days we see the environment which is polluted with incitement, with hatred, with anger. We need light and wisdom, and this is through our Daughters for Life scholars who will spread the light and hope. We have for Daughters for Life 2 programs, the scholarship program and the awards program. We appeal to everyone to help and give hand, to be a member of Daughters for Life family and be part of the solution of the world's challenges, not to be part of the problems. Let us help Daughters for Life spread this hope. And I want to read to you 2 letters that we received from Israeli Jewish girls who were supported by Daughters for Life awards. One of them, she said, "Thank you so much for the wonderful award and honor, and for your amazing work on the Daughters for Life Foundation. Considering the tragedy you and your family have endured, it's admirable to see your work with the foundation. It's raising awareness for social and feminist activism, tolerance and care. In this academic year, I participated in the faculty's legal feminism clinic at Haifa University. I learned a lot about the different streams of feminism, women's struggle, and the situation of women. Another woman from Haifa University who wrote, "I am writing to thank you for your generosity on the scholarship you gave me. This award is more than just help for me, and it's amazing to know that there are still people like you, like Daughters for Life and like you, who care about the students in need. I had no help from my parents because of miscommunication with them." This is an Israeli Jewish young woman who wrote it. "I am in a distance with my 4 brothers, and I really miss them. My twin brothers live and studies in Tel Aviv. My youngest brother lives with my mother, and my 2 sisters live in boarding school in Jerusalem. The thing that I want best is to be independent in life. So my studies are my first priority. With your help, with the degree, I will find my way and the place where I belong in this world. I learn mathematics combined with teaching. I choose this profession because I really relate to it and have motivation to continue, especially after your investment in students like me. I have no intention of giving up. Math is fascinating and pity to see that Israel has no sympathy for this profession. During the academic year, I volunteered the project, a social project which includes activities with the children from families in financial difficulties. It's easy for me to relate to that because I come from such a family. Therefore, it allows me to spend time with the children and give them warmth and love. It warms my heart that there are donors and people like you who care about me. Beyond that, this provided me something to learn on, and that is very important for students. Thanks to the award, I got to start my life with the new beginning after finishing the degree without delays due to financial problems. Financial problems and the challenge should never be an obstacle to any young woman because I fully believe this world can endure and only endure to be a different one with women's education and women's role. And that's what are you doing these days to make a difference in this world. I don't take it for granted. Your grant has been so important in my life. So that's Daughters for Life, to bring people together without any discrimination. It's painful to me when someone to say that we are discriminating. I will never accept any discrimination against anyone because I am a person who values life and we all are equal and similar. So have faith in Daughters for Life, have hope, and join Daughters for Life. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Dr. Avaleish. That was wonderful. I think one of the themes that was common in what Steve said and what Dr. Avaleish said, and about Daughters for Life, it's about New College of Florida. It's about good educational institutions. They're about individuals. The particular matters far, far more than the abstract. And it's not difficult to understand why Dr. Avaleish has been recommended for Nobel Peace Prize. His transformation of personal tragedy into an extraordinary vision of bringing peace to the Middle East and elsewhere in the world by the education of women has inspired all of us. And that's because it seems so right. Our future is that of what our students will do. For New College's part, the aspiration that Daughters for Life students would bring new ideas and perspectives to a campus largely populated by Floridians has been amply borne out. These young women have done that and more. They've become an integral part of campus community. They're actively involved in clubs and sports as well as their studies. They have provided perspectives that are new to many on campus and to the community. And they've learned a lot too. And so is the institution of which they are now a part. We've also learned that a program like this requires support. We hadn't fully thought out the need to dedicate resources to help these young women get acclimated to our community, or things like, basic things like what they would do over the holidays or where they would store their belongings when they went home for the summer. Those are seemingly simple things, but they're distractions that college students just don't need as they engage in the rigorous academics of New College. Luckily, others recognized these gaps and stepped into the breach. So we owe a particular debt of gratitude to Gadir Irshad and Dr. Karen Hamad, who has become a friend and mentor to these students, going above and beyond again and again. Of course, that doesn't surprise us, knowing Karen's remarkable mother, Renee. What the Daughters for Life program, oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Karen, yeah. And one of the things that the institution learned and what the Daughters for Life program and students have helped us recognize is that bringing women from the Middle East is important and massively important, but we, and I think Daughters for Life as well, are interested in accomplishing a bigger objective. We need to encourage students from elsewhere, from Latin and South America, Asia and Europe, to come to New College. One, it's good for the college. Two, it's good for them. And it allows the college to become ever more diversified and more aware of foreign cultures. Americans can tend to be quite insular. And we also need to support U.S. students and Daughters for Life students who wish to study away. All the students that come should have the same access to opportunities. And broadening our reach will require an investment. So we will need to dedicate our resources to the recruitment and support of international students. We'll also need to provide guidance to all students, faculty and staff, on how best to welcome and interact with an increasingly diverse student body. This is exciting and important work, and it's our obligation as educators to prepare all our students for a global and complex world where they can thrive and contribute. So we're grateful today for your support for the Daughters for Life program and for the expanded vision for creating at New College an academic environment that encourages the sharing of different, even sometimes conflicting, views and perspectives, because that is the world our students will inherit after they graduate. And I want to mention one other thing because I saw Pat Johnson here. This is this is the first fundraiser we've had, I think, for Daughters for Life, at which Senator Bob Johnson, who was a great supporter, is not here. And I just want to remember him and say how much we miss him. And so now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker. We've been speakers, but the real speaker, Geraldine Brooks. Geraldine Brooks is Australian-born, and she doesn't need much introduction, so I'm not going to say a lot. But she's American now, American-Australian, lives in Martha's Vineyard. She's a storied journalist, and I think many of us have read pieces of hers. She's also written 8 books. And 5 are fiction. One, March, won the Pulitzer Prize back a number of years ago. And there's 3 lovely pieces of nonfiction, and I haven't read all of them, but I've read a good chunk of them, and I'm working my way through the rest. And we've been debating what, we, being everybody else I've run into here, which is our most favorite. And so I'm not going to say anything, but she has a new book coming out, and I don't know what she's going to talk about. So, Geraldine, please come up and welcome. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
I could not be more honored and thrilled to be here today because this cause is so close to my heart. When Sue Jacobson got in touch about a year ago and asked if I would come and support this wonderful initiative to educate the young women of the Middle East, I didn't even have to think about it because it touched all the bases for me empowerment of women, outreach to the women of the Middle East, and the idea of education. I would not be here today if it were not for a scholarship. Like the remarkable vision of Dr. Abu Alaysh, the scholarship that I received also came out of a tragedy, and a tragedy that was then turned into an opportunity. And the tragedy was a young Australian journalist named Greg Shackleton was very bravely covering the Indonesian invasion of East Timor, and he and his entire film crew were summarily executed by the Indonesian army. And the circumstances of their death were covered up for many years. But if it hadn't been for the film and the commentary that he had sent back before he was killed, Indonesia's brutality in that invasion might have gone completely unrecorded. So he was a witness to history. And his wife wanted him to be remembered, and he had always nurtured an ambition to attend graduate school at Columbia University School of Journalism. And so she cajoled and she begged and she harassed and she picked pockets and she created the Australian News Correspondence Memorial Scholarship in his name, and I was the first recipient of that scholarship. We didn't have a great deal of money when I was growing up. I am the first person in my family to attend college. I didn't intend to become a novelist. I always wanted to be a journalist from the time I was 8 years old. And I can remember the moment when I conceived this ambition with great clarity. I had a dental appointment in the city, and my mother had taken me, and after the appointment she said, "We must go and see where Dad works." And my dad worked as a proofreader on the Sydney newspaper. And we arrived at his office in downtown Sydney, and it was just before the presses were about to roll for the afternoon edition of the paper. So he took me down to the press floor, and I'm 8 and very small, and I remember the size of those enormous presses and the great rolls of newsprint, and the ink truck had just arrived and had injected the ink for the printing press into the big cisterns in the floor, so there was a sort of a mist of ink in the air. And the foreman came and hit the big red button that started the presses rolling, and you could see the newsprint spinning. And it took off in a blur across the room, and then the papers started to fall onto the conveyor belt. And my dad reached out and grabbed one and handed it to me. And it was warm. It was hot off the presses. And I looked down at the headline and I thought, I am the first person in the city who knows what's going on right now. And I was so excited by that idea, so I thought of nothing else but becoming a newspaper reporter. And when I was admitted to Sydney University, I thought, what does a newspaper reporter need to know? And I read the paper, and there was a lot of politics in it, and there was also a lot of cultural coverage. So I did a double major in government and fine arts, thinking that that would make me possibly employable. And so 4 years later, I got my degree, and I leave the university fabulously well informed on the uses of tempera in Italian wall painting in Quattrocento, Florence, and classical political theory from Plato to Hobbes. And the Sydney Morning Herald hired me, and they sent me to the sports department to cover the races. And that's how journalism works. I hate to tell you, they say that if you love law and sausage, you shouldn't look too closely at how they're made. I'm afraid that that is also sometimes true of journalism. But I loved being a reporter. It was everything I could have hoped for. For a girl who had lived in a very narrow, lower middle class life, we went nowhere. We had no car. We never went more than, 20 miles on vacation if we could afford to do that. Suddenly I had a license to explore any life I could go as the Sydney Morning Herald and find out about people. And so 3 years later, when this scholarship was created, my boss said, you should apply for it. And I did, and I got it. And that was remarkable because then I was in New York City studying, seeing the world. And I met 2 very important men that year. One of them I married. And the other one was the recruiter for the Wall Street Journal. And I had heard, I always intended to go straight home and get on with my real life in Sydney, but I heard that the Wall Street Journal had a internship over the summer. And so I applied for that, thinking I'll do 3 months and that'll give me some good experience before I go home. And they called me after they read my application and they said, you're too old to be an intern, but we have a vacancy in our Cleveland bureau. Would you like to apply for that? And Cleveland was my first foreign assignment. But way leads on to way in journalism, and I ended up back in Australia founding an Australasian bureau that the Wall Street Journal had never had before, which was a wonderful job because suddenly I'm a foreign correspondent at home, and they'd never had one before. They had no idea what I would be good for, so I could do some macroeconomics and some corporate profiles. But most of the time, I just ranged around the outback writing weird stories, going on the last cattle drove across Western Queensland or delivering supplies by barge through the crocodile-infested waters of the Gulf. And you might have seen a movie called Crocodile Dundee, and you might have thought it was a broad comedy. It was a documentary film. But I was in New Zealand, which was part of my beat, and I'd just written a piece about global warming research. And this is 1987, so it was pretty early on in the science of climate change. And New Zealand was a hub of that research. Why? Because in New Zealand, they have more sheep than people by a factor of 2,000 to 1. And sheep are great producers of the greenhouse gas methane. And I had been following climate scientists up verdant hillsides as they tried to get methane samples from the sheep. And I'll just let you think about how they might have done that for a minute. And I came back and I wrote the article, and it appeared on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And the night it appeared, I got a call from my foreign editor, and she was a scary woman. And she had never called me because Sydney was very low on her priority list. And so I went to the phone stricken, thinking, holy cow, she is going to sack me for putting too many jokes about flatulent sheep in the Wall Street Journal. But no, she had called to ask if I would be interested in becoming the Middle East bureau chief for the Wall Street Journal. And I say, don't look too closely at this because I was completely unqualified. But of course I said yes. What an adventure. So I had a month to study Arabic, get my life together, and arrive in my base, Cairo, from where I was then expected to cover 22 countries, all the Arabic-speaking countries, plus Israel, Iran. And I didn't know what I was doing. So the first month was this I was a nervous wreck. It was a blur. I would be on a plane to the Persian Gulf where Kuwaiti ships were being shelled by the Iranians, and then I'd get a call saying, no, you need to go to Yemen. So I'm on the plane with a briefing book, Yemen 101, and then it was October. I remember the night we arrived in Cairo very vividly because it was Erev Yom Kippur, so we went to find the synagogue. And we found the synagogue in downtown Cairo, and there were more soldiers outside the synagogue than there were worshippers inside the synagogue. So it was such a new world to me, and that was October. And in December, the first intifada began in Gaza. And so I went to Gaza to report on the intifada. I didn't know what I was doing, so I get a call from this boss who I said was very scary. And she said, I need you to interview one of the shabab, the stone-throwing youth, whose sudden energetic uprising had totally stunned the world. And I didn't know how to find such a person. So I knew there was a lot of trouble in Hebron, so I got in my rented car and I drove to Hebron. It was raining. My car had Israeli number plates. I get as far as Arub camp and a big piece of concrete comes shearing out right into the windscreen. Car skids. I just miss a big cedar tree. And I thought, that's great. I'll interview that guy. I was much more scared of Karen Elliott House at the Wall Street Journal than that kid in the keffiyeh with the concrete. So I jump out of the car, and of course his eyes turn into dinner plates because only crazy settlers jump out of cars when you stone them. So he's running and he's saying, get away from me. And I knew enough Arabic to say, Ana Sahafia, I need to talk to you. And he said, no, the people here are going to kill you. And then all of a sudden an Israeli patrol turns up and he disappears. So I run into the nearest shop that I can find, and I'm there for a minute. And when I come out, he's up on a pile of rubble, and he's going, come. And so I spent the afternoon with him, and he told me the story of his life, how his family had been displaced in 48, and he lived in 2 rooms. It was a leaky structure with a corrugated roof, and the cold was seeping up from the floor. The rain was coming in. There were 13. He was the oldest of 13 children. And as Dr. Abelesh writes, the oldest boy has a huge responsibility. This is a 15-year-old kid, and he's telling me about his father who works as a laborer on a building site, and he loves school, but he knows he'll have to leave school the next year because he has to work to support these kids. And he says, if I had a different life, I would want to be a doctor. But meanwhile, he's a soldier for Arafat, and he is committed to the Intifada, and that is his life now, and that's what he's doing. And he's really crazy angry with his father because his father believes in coexistence, and his father speaks fluent Hebrew. And his father negotiates with the army to stop the kids all getting arrested, but the deal is they're supposed to be very quiet, and he won't be quiet. So he's in conflict with his father. Anyway, I go back to my lovely hotel room. They bring me my dinner on a silver tray, and I write this story about a boy who has no hope. And then I leave Israel, and I go off and I cover some other catastrophe. I barge into somebody else's lives and ask them for the most terrible details, their sadness. And a couple of months have passed, and I've almost forgotten him. I've hardly been home to get a change of clothes. I get back to Cairo, and there's a letter on my desk. Austin, Texas. Dr. Rex Repass, ophthalmologist. Out of the letter falls a $100 bill. I read your story about the boy in the refugee camp. Can you give him this $100 and tell him that if he wants to be a doctor, I'm prepared to help him? My first reaction was, damn. And that ungenerous reaction, I'm ashamed of that, but I didn't know how to find this guy. You know, he would only give me his first name because he was afraid of the soldiers. He'd taken me through such a circuitous route through the camp, but then I looked at the $100 and I thought of those 13 kids, and I told my assistant to book me a flight to Israel because there are a million stories I can do there, right? So I get back to the camp and I say, I need to find a boy named Ra'ed. And they say, yeah, sure. Here, he's right over here. He's an Intifada activist. This big, tall, heavy-set guy. No, not that one. Oh, we know the one you want. We go up through the camp, open the door. Much nicer furniture. No, not this one. How can I find this Ra'ed? And I said, this Ra'ed's father had 2 wives. Oh, him. Well, we all know him, because even though it's possible to have more than one wife, hardly any Palestinians do that. So we went, and Ra'ed's mother grabs me and embraces me and kisses the $100 bill, because not only is Ra'ed now arrested, The father, Mahmoud, who had wanted coexistence, was rounded up in a routine sweep and thrown into a prison in the Negev desert. So the family was out without their breadwinner, and everything was terrible. Anyway, I'm going to try and cut this long story short and jump ahead. So Ra'ed finally is sentenced to 5 years in jail for his part in the Intifada. Meanwhile, Rex Repass in Texas comes to volunteer his services at the Eye Hospital St. John's in Jerusalem, helps the family a lot with their problems, renews his commitment to paying for Ra'ed's education when he gets out of prison. So 5 years pass, the kid's in jail. I am all over the world. You know, my beat changes from the Middle East to covering UN operations in Bosnia and Somalia. But when I find out that Ra'ed has got out of jail, I go back there and I find him working 16 hours a day making plastic sandals in a factory where, because of the difficulties getting to and from his home, he sleeps there at night. He gets 1 day off. So I think now is the time to call Dr. Rex. And I call up his clinic in Austin and I ask to speak to Dr. Rex. And there's an intake of breath on the other end of the phone. You don't know? Dr. Rex died 1.5 years ago. He had a private plane and he crashed it. So the next day I have to pick up Ra'ed, and he goes through all the Palestinian lovely politeness. How are you? How is your husband? How are your sister? How is your mother? And finally the question I'm dreading, how is Dr. Rex? And I have to tell him that this hope that he's held on to for 5 years is gone. So we spend the day together, and you know, he all he says, he's very stoic, is, "Fate, it has not been kind to me." And I go, "You got that right." Anyway, so I spend the next week before I'm going to meet him again, going to all the Palestinians I know, all the influential people, the people with what you call wasta. And I think one of them's going to help this guy because, you know, he put it all on the line for the interview. None of them were interested. We've got 1,000 boys like that. Why should we care about this one? And they have a point, but this is my one. So when I pick him up from work the following week, I know what I'm going to tell him, and it isn't that his future is in a plastic sandal making factory. So my husband and I ended up sending him to college, Bethlehem University. And at that point, he was 21, and he decided he was too old to embark on medical school, which was just as well for us, because that would have been really expensive. But he wanted to be a teacher, so we supported him through his teaching qualification. And finally, I'm back there for his graduation, sitting between his two mothers, just as proud of him as they were, because with all the difficulties that he'd confronted, he managed to get honors. And so we're leaving later, and he says, "You know, we've got some time. Would you like to visit the Church of the Nativity?" And I said, "Yeah, I would. I've never been there." And he looks at me. He says, "You've been to Israel 100 times. Every Christian always goes first to the Church of the Nativity." I say, "Ra'ed, you never asked me my religion." And he goes, "What is it?" I go, "I'm Jewish." And he crosses the road, he bangs his hand against this stone wall, he doubles up like he's been assaulted, and I don't know what is going to happen next. And then he turns around and he is laughing so hard. And he says, "I don't understand it. Why you know, from so far away would come into my life, a Jew, and help me." And I said, "Geraldine and Jewish, they don't belong in the same sense." I said, "What did you think I was going to say?" And he said, "I thought you were going to tell me you're a Buddhist." So I wrote another story about him and about this, his education and what was going to happen to him next, and about his disillusionment with the Palestinian Authority. He felt very betrayed by them because so much of the money had been siphoned into the pockets of wealthy people and not into the camps where it was so needed. And I write this, and then the next thing I know, it's another, this time phone call out of the blue. A Palestinian American Quaker had read this article and decided that he wanted to do something. And as a result of that communication, I'm happy to say 80 Palestinian students had educations in the United States. So that's a pretty good return on $100. And I'm just going to end, I mean, we can have some questions later, but I just want to end by saying, you know, since I've been writing fiction, I write about the past. And I write about particularly how people respond when they're caught up in catastrophe. And one of my novels is about the plague, and one of my novels is about the Civil War, and one is about the dispossession of indigenous Americans at the time of British colonial occupation. And always I'm looking at who do you become when tragedy, when chaos, when your whole life is turned upside down. Because as a foreign correspondent, I saw both responses, both possibilities, both sides of the spectrum. Either you can become your best self or your worst self. You can become morally lost like the Ba'athist torturer that I met in Iraq, or you can become incredibly heroic like the Kurdish woman who had to lead her family to safety over a mined mountain pass, or unbelievably kind. Or you can be Dr. Abu Aleish, who takes tragedy and tries to turn it into something extraordinary. And, you know, I think we all hope that we will be that person, but I don't think we know until we're tested. And the other thing that has happened, because I write books that are set in such a variety of time periods, and I try and empathize with people in lives that are very different to my own, there seems to be a school of thought that human beings, that you can't know the consciousness of somebody that's different from you. That if they lived a long time ago, or if they're a different gender, or if they're a different race or ethnicity, how can you understand them? I don't believe in that. I never have believed in it. I didn't believe it as a journalist. As Dr. Abu Aleish says, the cry of a newborn baby is the same, and I would say that the keening of a mother who's lost a child is the same, whether it's in the dirt floor of a Eritrean hut, or a concrete floored refugee camp, or a beautifully appointed salon on Fifth Avenue. You lose a child. The feeling is the same. I believe that what unites us is always more than what divides us. And anyone who can, I am begging you, let your pockets be picked for this good cause. Because when I was lucky enough to know the great novelist William Styron, who was a fellow Martha's Vineyard resident for many years before he died, and when he tried to think his way into the mind of Nat Turner, the African-American leader of the slave revolt in Tidewater, Virginia, he got taken to the woodshed by a number of African-American writers who were outraged that Styron, as a white male, had dared to think his way into Nat Turner's head. But he had one defender in the African-American writing community, and that was James Baldwin. And what Baldwin said has always stuck with me, and it has become my guiding star for my own writing. And this is what Baldwin said: each of us, helplessly and forever, contains the other. Male and female, black and white, white and black. And I would add to that, Christian and Muslim, Arab and Jew. We are part of each other. Thank you very much.
we go. I think I should be on.
There's no escape, Captain.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for that really wonderful talk. This is our Q&A, and if you will notice, there are microphones on either side of the room, and we would invite you, if you have questions, or now it's moved to the sort of the middle of the room. If you have questions, please step to the mic, and I will call on you. I just want to ask one question, though, before others start going to the microphone. As someone who teaches at New College and works with students all the time, they look at their lives, the stories that are going to happen. They see all the possibilities. You're telling your story in hindsight, and it seems like whenever you hit a zig, it zagged, but you had the confidence that you could go. What advice do you give to students about how to say yes to those moments when it looks like your direction is being shifted? How do you say yes to that?
I think that I think of that Robert Frost poem, Two Roads Diverged in a Yellow Wood. I've always found that doing the thing that you're most afraid of has led me into the best places in my life. And I remember this very vividly when I was a reporter. It was the morning you woke up and you had to make the hardest phone call, or you had to go to the most scary place. That would always turn out to be the best day at the end of the day. And I got that from my mother, I think. She always said, find out what it is you're afraid of and then go do it.
That's great advice. Thank you. Thank you. We have a question here.
Question on this worldwide perspective. How did your parents, your ancestors, come to be in Australia?
Oh, my goodness. I can tell you my mother's story very quickly. She was a product of the great Irish immigration that happened to Australia between 1840 and 1860. So my entire matrilineal mother's side of the family are Irish. My father is an interesting kettle of fish, and I'm just going to tell this really briefly. He was born in California, and he was a big band singer in the 1930s. He sang in Hollywood at one of the very first Academy Awards celebrations. And he was a wild and reckless young man, and he ran away with Al Jolson's producer's wife. And that wasn't a good career move for him. And his agent said he would need to get a new singing name because nobody was going to hire him anymore. And so he looked out the window and saw Brooks Brothers, and that's how I got the name Brooks. But so this woman, Ruby, turned out to be no damn good, and she ran off very soon after with yet another guy and married him bigamously. And when my father found out about this, he punched the guy's lights out in the foyer of the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco. So once again, not a good career move. And so he shortly after was offered an opportunity to tour with a big band that was going to Australia. He went. They got halfway across the country, and the band leader absconded with all their pay, so he couldn't afford to get home. And he got a job singing with an Australian ensemble, and they were singing together the night that news came through that Paris had fallen to the Nazis. And after the gig, they all went out and they had a few beers, and they, as you do, they were all going, I got to enlist in the morning and fight those Nazi bastards. And my father said, I'll bloody well enlist with you then. And so he did, even though he was a U.S. citizen. He fought in the Australian infantry. And when he came back, he met my mother, and that was the end of the wild and crazy.
Okay, we have another question. Heather.
Hi there. My name's Heather. Nice to see you today. Fantastic. That was a spectacular. I was riveted the entire time. You could have kept speaking. First, I feel as though that could be another book for you, your father's story. I think a title would be That Woman Was No Damn Good. Could be outstanding. But I'm curious. The woman, the wife of the fallen journalist who created the scholarship for you. Did you keep in touch with her? Because I feel your $100 investment really wasn't your $100 investment. It seems like it was her pickpocketing investment, and see what she did. That's this lifelong, these streams that keep going off of her generosity.
That's true, and I do keep in touch with her. And in fact, the book before last I dedicated to her husband, Greg Shackleton, very much with her in mind. And that was a book of essays called The Idea of Home, and in particular, the essay called At Home in the World, which was about being a foreign correspondent, I dedicated to Greg Shackleton and Daniel Pearl.
Renee Hamad has a question.
Yes, I do. You said that you were given 1 month to learn Arabic.
Yeah, good luck with that, right?
It took me 71 years, and I still don't speak it as well as you. Do you speak it, and do you read
No,
it
I
and
don't
write
really.
it?
I don't speak it, but I found the most wonderful Egyptian teacher because we're going to live in Cairo, and I went to the most, ethnically Arab neighborhood in Sydney, and I was reading the notice board to see if I could find, and I got this guy who was fantastic. He had grown up in Shubra, which is one of the very, very densely populated, quite poor neighborhoods of Cairo, and he was the last of 17 children. And his mother was so used to having babies at that time, she delivered him in the shower unassisted. Anyway, he created an Arabic course for my husband and myself that was so funny. It was all about what will happen. And so the first lesson was arriving in Cairo and the taxi driver rips you off. And then the next lesson was about you get to your apartment and the Boab, the doorman, complains he has a bad back. And then you go out to a restaurant and you get a stomach bug. So this is how we learned Arabic. But it was enough to honestly, it was enough to get me where I needed to go and find somebody who could interpret for me. And, young people in the Arab world are fabulously well educated, and they're not lazy like English speakers. They know many languages and they know them fluently. And I never took an interpreter with me because I didn't know who they were, whether they were working for the government or the secret police, and I knew nobody in the situation would trust them. So I would get where I needed to go, and then, like magic, I would find an interpreter, and many of those people became my great friends.
We are almost out of time, so we have time for one more question.
This is just a question. I'm curious of your comments on journalism today, how it is different from the journalism that you practiced and the way people get their news now, and the reliability of it.
Yeah, I think the upside of it is the citizen journalism, that we can see things that otherwise would have been covered up. Some of the raw footage that we get from people's cell phone cameras is giving us an insight into what's really going on, not only in this country in terms of, excessive police force against black people. The footage that can come now out of the West Bank, so it's harder for governments to exclude. If there had have been, more cell phones in Gaza at the time of Cast Lead, we would have known a lot more about what was going on. We don't have to rely on an elite core of media. And that's just as well, because unfortunately, companies are not investing in foreign correspondents anymore. The kind of work that I did for the Wall Street Journal was incredibly expensive. Keeping a bureau in the Middle East was incredibly expensive. And most organizations, except for the very largest, have cut right back, so that we're relying more and more on young stringers who, really work for pitiful pay. Really, they're subsidizing their own existences in many cases to get the news for us. And I think that we see the results of that. I think one of the reasons we were blindsided by the rise of ISIS was because there is so little professional foreign correspondent investment by major companies anymore. And that can be catastrophic for us, I think.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we're going to have some closing remarks from our co-chairs, but let's another round of applause for Geraldine Brooks.
So I just wanted to thank everybody for coming today. I know how many choices there are in Sarasota, how generous people are in Sarasota, how many charities, how many options we have, how many ways to spend our time, and that you all chose to come here today is really a testament to your belief in what we're doing, and I really appreciate that. Last year, when I stood up here for the first time, I was really nervous. And I was met with such an outpouring of support. And what that translated into is 4 beautiful young women here, Rosanna, Simona, Diana, Gita. And they're in America. Now they're in Sarasota. Now they're at New College. Now they're in my heart. You know, we have these wonderful girls here. I also was asked to thank you from their parents. Their parents have been through a lot to get them here. I have been blessed to hear stories of the peril and the hardship that it takes to get their children here, even with all of our generosity. Stories of smuggling their children in cars to get to embassies, to get visas, treacherous border crossings, you know, things we don't even think about. They risk sending their children here where they're not here, they're not close, they can't feel them, touch them, hug them, but yet they want you to know how thankful they are and how grateful they are. Okay. You know, it's been hard these last few months, right? There's really loud talkers on TV, in the media, and they preach hate and they preach fear. And it's easy to listen to them. It's easy to let that get in your soul. What's hard is to look at my daughter and to try to explain that hate and, you know, try to help them understand how sometimes that's even directed at them. You know, they understand that their maternal grandparents were refugees from Egypt and Palestine. They also understand that their paternal grandfather spent years in a Japanese-American internment camp in this country, only because he was born to Japanese parents. So they understand that sometimes even bad things can happen in this amazing country we live in. So when the conversation at my dinner table changes from swim practice and homework and who was mean to who at the lunch table to this really loud talker who's the top running presidential candidate saying he's going to put all Arab Americans in a camp. And my 12-year-old looks at me and says, "Mommy, will you have to go too?" You know, that's really hard. But today, I get to bring them here, introduce them to all of you, and they get to learn that their city, their town, their home doesn't feel that way and believes in love and hope and peace and wants to support this initiative and help us bring more girls here to study. Thank you. Thank you. We're lucky enough to have Dr. Abouleish and Geraldine Brooks staying for a little bit for book signings and coffee and pastries. We'd love for you all to stay. Thank you again for coming.
Because we have some wonderful things in common. All right. Oh, excellent. All right. It's always good to see you. The other three, I think. Thank you. Again with the hair. How are you? Glad you're here. Glad to be sponsored. Where are you from? It's so nice to see you again. We were here when you first arrived on campus, and now you've been here for almost 2 years, is that correct?
Yep.
What has it meant to you to be here and be part of New College?
It's been definitely a journey of education, learning, and also educating people. It's been amazing. It's been very inspirational in many ways, I think.
And what about you? You've been involved in so many organizations as well. We've seen you at the UN Women's thing. You know, what does it mean to become part of this community and to share your culture with this community?
It's been very challenging, yet it's very powerful for me. I feel like I have developed many social skills over the past 2 years that have helped me get involved with the community here in Sarasota as well. But yeah.
One thing too is that now you're upperclassmen and you're welcoming a new branch of scholars in here. What does that mean to you to be able to welcome these new scholars?
I think having more scholars on campus makes us feel like we're part of this community as well. Like for me, having new Daughters for Life has definitely made my experience on campus so much better. Yeah.
And what about you?
And that's why we're here, to bring more Daughters for Life scholars next year, so we can have more Daughters for Life on campus.
And Dr. Abladesh, we just had a moment to talk with him. He's very excited about this, and he's very proud of what you've accomplished, not only as students, but also as ambassadors, you know, and he's so proud of what you've accomplished. Tell us what that message is that you want to keep sending out to this community.
I think what I want to send out to this community specifically is that we represent the real Middle East. We represent the real lives of women in the Middle East. We're not exceptions. We're definitely the rule. My grandma is an exception. She is extremely powerful, but I'm just the rule. Like, women in the Middle East are so gifted, so talented, so strong, so resilient. And if provided with opportunities like this one, they will strive and they will thrive. Yeah.
And I'm sure they will. And what about you?
Education is our only passport to this world, so with Sarasota Community and Daughters for Life, we're very thankful for them to give us such opportunity to study here at New College.
Dr. O'Shea, we're here at your Sudikoff Center at your beautiful campus to kick off another Daughters for Life global recognition. What does this mean to you to see this reoccurring each and every year?
It's phenomenal. Those, we'd hope the Daughters for Life students would really bring different perspectives from a selfish point of view to our mostly Floridian students. Well, they've done that and they've done more. They've become part of the community. They're in our sports teams, our clubs. They're a real part of the community, and they've just brought another level of awareness to things global, and that's what these kids, and their kids too, and they've benefited as well, this is the world they will inherit. And so it's fantastic, and it's just great to see it. And
well, one of the things, Doctor, that's so unique is that through your leadership and kind of vision, this program has really grown and nurtured under your guidance. And it's really an important thing to expose not only this community, but these young women to this community.
Oh, yeah, and they hear things about the United States that, are just... their press is as bad as our press in some ways. It's not all of the press, but they get to know people individually. They form very fast friendships with us schools. And that, when they go back, they touch so many others. And so the effects of that will ripple out again and again and again, especially they're young. And, they will touch so many people, their own families, their friends. And, that'll be a message about who they know in this country as well. So, yeah, we're excited about it.
And Dr. Obladesh is here, and you've established not only a great working relationship with him, but a friendship as well as he continues to do it. And he speaks so highly of you and what New College has done. But you also have a full program here today as well. You have a wonderful keynote speaker that's going, and a full house here in the Sudikoff. It looks wonderful inside.
Well, and I haven't been inside yet, so I haven't got to see what it looks like. Normally, it's not quite, it looks a little more functional. I can't believe we have so many people here. It's truly, we thought, maybe a couple hundred, if we're lucky, but it's sold out, and well over 300, and we have to turn people away. So I hate turning people away, but it's a great occasion, yeah.
And as you celebrate this occasion today, some of the girls are just walking in now, some of your scholars are just walking in now. What do you want people to take away from this event today?
Well, education's about the young and the future, and this event is quintessentially about that because education is trust in the next generation. And they inherit this world, and I'm hoping I'll be around 30 years, and things see how things came out. And if you're in education, you believe in the potential of young people to go out and change this world, and to take care of some things we can't take care of, and who knows what will happen. But that's the marvelous thing about it.
Ms. Jacobson, you're here at the Daughters for Life Global Recognition Dinner today, and you've been involved with this from the very beginning. What does this mean to you to see this program continue to evolve and nurture itself here?
Well, I just look up on the stage and see 7 living, breathing, studying Daughters for Life here at New College. One of them is actually going to do early graduation this year. I listen to their dreams. They want to be doctors, work for the UN, documentary filmmakers. These women are fulfilling our dreams of what educating women can do by empowering them, by inspiring them to become leaders. Their view of the world is so much larger than ours because, in some cases, unfortunately, in many cases, unfortunately, because of their life experience. And that, on the second angle of the beauty of this program, has a wonderful world-expanding influence for our Florida students. So it helps them prepare to go out into a multicultural world. It helps them learn to think of a broader world than their own. So it's wonderful to see it come to fruition, and I hope you'll meet the women as well because they're wonderful.
And having the opportunity, we've already did a couple of interviews with some of but we were here when they first arrived, as you were when they first arrived, and welcomed them into the New College campus. And it's really been a win-win situation. The Sarasota Manatee community has really welcomed these young scholars here, with generosity, with, just an outpouring of goodwill. Why do you think that this community has kind of responded so well to your request to help support these scholars?
Well, first I'll say it's not been without its challenges, because anytime someone has a different life experience or a different way of thinking, it can be threatening to some people. By and large, the community has embraced these women because everything you read in the papers, everything you see on the 24-hour news cycle, with all due respect, doesn't compare to meeting someone that looks like your daughter or your sister or your granddaughter. Every time one of the girls comes over to have dinner with my mom and me at the independent living place where my mom lives, people think it's her granddaughter. And that just... They are our family, and it expands our sense of empathy and family and friendship. The interesting thing that has happened within our community because of this program is the broader lines of interfaith, interethnic dialogue and friendship that have come together in support of this program. And we're very proud and warmed to experience that and to see that we are working with and friends with people we never would have met before. So it is helping our community all the way around. And before you finish off with me, I just want to give a shout out to you and to METV. You have been a part of this since before it even started, since before the first class of women arrived. METV Gratis created 2 beautiful videos that help tell the story and sell the scholarship program to potential friends and donors, and we are endlessly grateful to you.
What do you want people to take away from this event today as the scholars are here and you have some wonderful guest speakers? What, at the end of the day, what do you want them to take away?
A belief in the transformative power of educating women, a belief that women from across the world are our daughters. There are friends, that our embrace and our vision of the world that is our world needs to be bigger. It's not just our neighborhood or our city or our country. It is bigger. We are all family. We are interdependent. And what we do can matter to people across the world and vice versa.
I feel proud of it. I feel hopeful, inspired, and there is hope in this world that the people are there to give and to support and to make a difference in this world through the new College of Florida and the Sarasota community who came to support Daughters for Life and to make life from death and to give hope from pain and suffering. That's what is needed, not to look backwards, but to keep moving in a positive way and to make change in our world, which is endemic these days with darkness. So we want to give light, and Daughters for Life today, at this luncheon, we give a ray of hope to our world.
Have you had an opportunity to stay in touch with all of the young scholars that are here?
They don't owe me. They made it. They have the potential. We were just a mean to help them and to support these girls because they have the potential. And they owe the Sarasota community, the Sarasota people who translated the dreams of these young women into a reality, to be educated, to be enlightened, and to get the right education to make a difference in this world. They are called Daughters for Life. They are my daughters. We are keeping in touch with them, and we are proud of them. And this year, I encourage all of them, we will celebrate in May the graduation of the first Daughters for Life scholar.
And you've got to be so proud of that and so thankful for the community support that you've received. Having met the young women that have come here and to see their enthusiasm and their dedication is just the beginning, because this program is going to continue to grow and nurture. Would you think that's correct?
It's growing, and we have by now about 6 universities which are partnering with Daughters for Life. In Canada, every year we have about 20 new scholarships. So we are proud of it, and what I wanted to prove to the people that life is what we make it. Always has been, always will be. It's in our hands, not to look backwards, that from the pain we created hope and we made hope. From the killing of my daughters, we gave life, and we want to give life. It's not about the biology, it's about the humanity. It's our responsibility. We need all of the people to work together, not to watch it, but what can we do to make a difference in this world? Because I fully believe this world can endure, and only endure, with women's education and women's role. And it's time for women to take the lead.
Well, you have several really good friends here in Manatee that welcome you back. And you look around, it's a sold-out event today that are welcoming you back. And they really believe that you're part of the Sarasota citizens now. And we welcome you back each and every time you come here.
Thank you so much. We are one family. They are Daughters for Life members and family. And that's what is needed. We need Daughters for Life, which humanizes, not to politicize. Daughters for Life, it brings unity to the community. It brings hope to the community, and that's what is needed. I feel here I'm surrounded by my family, by my members, and I'm coming back to my home.